Introduce you today the President of the Quebec Fédération of Labour, le Président de la Fédération des travailleurs du Québec, qui représente 540 000.
Representing some 140,000 members in the province of Quebec. A huge leader, personal friend.
Workers, and we have known each other for many, many, many years. He sits on the different committee of the Labour, he sits at the CLC, we sit together at the CLC. He sits on all kinds of international programs and national organization, and is a tremendous influential labor leader in Canada or in Quebec through the Fonds de solidarité qui représente un des plus grands.
Representing one of the most important funds, if not the most important union fund in the world, with assets of close to $9 billion. That's quite incredible. And when we speak of change, I think that the QFL, it started under Louis Laberge, obviously, and at that point in time, everybody was laughing at the movement, was saying this movement is going to become a group of businessmen.
About 25, 30 years ago, that how can the union be business? But so far, the union, as business, is worth approximately $9 billion, and over 600 or 700,000 Quebecers have pension plans with the Quebec Fed. So it shows that we can be both tremendously business and tremendously efficient. So it's a pleasure and honor for me, c'est un plaisir et un honneur de vous introduire le président de la Fédération des travailleurs et travailleuses du Québec, M. Michel Arsenault.
Thanks, Bob, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here for sure, and thanks for the invitation. Also, I'm sure that Alain de Grand Prix did it yesterday, but I would like that my turn to invite you to welcome you, in Quebec City. Welcome you also in the province of Quebec. You know, this is the oldest city of North of America, but more than that, Quebec City is a union town. And more than that, the province of Quebec is a union province. The average, the amount of workers unionized in this province in the city is over 40%. And in the province, we are at 40% unionized people. And let me tell you, a strong labor movement makes a difference, like Bob said in his introduction. Our labor laws here in Quebec are not perfect, but they are the best in the book around the continent. We have card check, so there's no vote when we file in for certification. If you get 50% plus one, you're certified. There's also the first contract binding arbitration. So employers has to sit down and bargain after you're certified. If not, they're stuck with an arbitration. There's also an anti-scab legislation. It is illegal to scab in this province. We also have, like you probably noticed in the last week, construction workers unionized at 100%. You're not allowed in this province to work on construction if you're not unionized. A strong union movement makes also a difference for the entire society as well. In this province, you have a daycare system at $7 per day per child for all of us. And let me tell you, that makes me proud to see my grandkids going to daycare and the parents are paying $7 per day. When I was living in Ontario, I remember I had a co-worker, she was paying in the year 2000, $40 per day per kid, per child. We also have a parental leave program. Fathers and mothers are allowed to 1 year at 85% of their salary to take care of their newborn, the father or the mother. We also have the right to refuse in a dangerous area with full compensation, workers' compensation for pregnant women, if the work is dangerous for her or the baby to come. We also have an automobile state insurance. When I was living in Ontario and I left in 2000, I was paying nearly $5,000 per year for my auto insurance. Here in Quebec, went down to $1,800. We also have a pay equity legislation to correct wages inequities that women have traditionally been victim of. We also have the lowest tuition fees in North America for university fees. When I left Ontario, my daughter, we were paying $4,500 per year. When we came here in 2000, went down to $1,800. For sure, we are paying more income tax, but at the same time, we are, I think, the most egalitarian society in North America because we are unionized at 40%. Because these gains were not achieved overnight, believe me. They are the result of 40 years of hard work, political fights, and union battles, in which your union, the Teamsters, played a major role in this province. Like in English Canada, we also have our right-wing nuts in this province. And more than ever, all over this country, we have to stick together, fight back, and I am sure that Brother Dordetti will talk to you about the strategy that we did together at the CLC with Bob, myself, and the other ones. I will now ask you to put your translating device. You will certainly permit me to keep on in French. Je voudrais, dans un premier...
First of all, I would like to thank Robert Bouvier. Thank you for his generous invitation. As he mentioned in my presentation, we started knowing each other at the CTC. We sat together side by side on the CTC, and Robert is always there to defend you, to defend his union, his Teamster members, with his openness of expression, his vast experience, his sense of pragmatism, etc. He makes quite the difference within the CLC, and I can say to you right here now that we're very glad to have him with us. At the QFL, there's going to be a convention at the end of November. Given the context where we are always under attack from everywhere, in Canada as well as in Quebec, more than ever, just think of C-377, the RAND formula that Conservatives want to tackle on in the next few months, special laws in Quebec on construction, a tax for the tax credits on the workers' funds. And in the province of Quebec, what can I say? We are the Gauls of the Americas, if you will. 40% of men and women are unionized here. But this is all very precarious, extremely precarious. We are part of Canada, we are part of North America, and in order to maintain and improve our working conditions, in order to improve and maintain our social laws, our movement has to be stronger than ever, certain retrograde laws elsewhere, whether it be here or elsewhere, one day will have repercussions and knock on the doors of what's happening in Quebec, whether it be social laws or those laws that are protecting workers or the right to be unionized. We are concerned at the QFL, and we share these concerns with other union leaders, to name the Teamsters, and the too high level of dissatisfaction among our ranks. There are a lot of young people who've joined our movement in your files as well as ours, and this is very important. They're very dissatisfied with regards to us. So it's important to speak about it. We're going to speak about it this week, but also how is the perception of the public with regards to us more than ever, and I think you started dealing with this week already. You have to do within Teamsters as well as the QFL. You have to take a strong and a dirty look at who we are. Not be afraid to delve into who we are. You know, what people are saying, what the young people are saying is quite incredible. So young people that come to work first morning, so the staff people have their card signed. It's the staff office that give them their collective agreement and explain to them what's in it. I think that that's not very healthy, if I may say so myself. Those young people that come into the work environment, it's not their fault, but they're confronted to an employer who's explaining their work conditions and who makes sure that the union card is signed. More often than not, the young individual, per se, will say that everything is coming from the employer, that all of this is just a vested interest, and it's just something that's coming to them and that they're entitled to, just like that. That something has to be done. We have to be activists. How did we get to where we are? How is it that we have a collective agreement such as it stands today? Go back to the battles that we had to fight and that we won, and to really add value to this collective agreement, and how it is that we can raise our families in dignity with proper wages, etc. We're going to be participating to a campaign, a publicity campaign with the QFL that's going to be around everywhere in Canada. We're going to be exposing all of the good work that unions do. There was a vote at the National Assembly, and you saw what happened with the construction workers that had to go back to work. We saw it in civil engineering. Also, we settled things on the residential side of things. But there's another one that's called commercial, institutional, and industrial that didn't want to settle. They just didn't want to settle because they wanted to remove overtime on weekends. And I worked on construction in Murdochville and Gaspésie in 1967, and that's how I was able to pay for my studies. We got double time on Saturday back then, and now we're asking us to come back, even if Quebec workers have huge productivity in construction sites. We're asked to go back before 1967. That's unacceptable. At the same time, 25 years without a conflict, 25 years without conflict, and it was quite a wake-up call for the youngins on the construction site. Lots of people there thought everything was just a vested interest that they were entitled to. All of them thought it came from the employer. What they saw, what the employers were doing in the last 2 weeks, the employer that we thought was a good guy, the Employers Association that wanted to take away their bread and butter from their table, let me tell you that that was a crude wake-up call. And I think these 2 weeks of a construction strike will have been useful just for that. They would have heard the message. They would have woken up, and all these people are going to be talking amongst themselves, and it'll make a clear message to the government. I would like to talk to you about retirement. Every day we have to fight to maintain our different retirement regimes. We're gonna need legislative changes. There needs to be equity between generations. We're going to have to speak to the Régie des Rentes du Québec. And with the CLC, we've started a campaign 2 years ago so that the Régie des Rentes du Québec be doubled. And that would remove something from employers, obviously, in terms of the defined benefits. If everybody could get 50% of guaranteed benefits by the CSST, the Worker Compensations Board, at 50%, so 50% of the workers' comp, that would make quite the difference. And we could negotiate special defined benefit funds and maintain what we already have. Often people speak badly of us in the newspapers because we are treated as spoiled brats. You know, the problem is not for those who have a retirement fund. The problem is that 50% of us don't have any. So that is a problem in and of itself. Another problem is that one older person out of two lives under the poverty line, and that in and of itself is a problem. In a society rich such as ours, we should be able to find solutions instead of denigrating those who do have a pension fund. I don't find it normal at the QFL or at Teamsters either. It's not normal that 50% of the elderly in the province of Quebec need a guaranteed supplementary revenue, which means 50% of our people are living, once again, as I said, under the poverty line. I also wanted to speak to you about the Fonds de Solidarité, QFL's Fonds de Solidarité, the Solidarity Fund. I was speaking to your colleague, my colleague, Jean Lavigne. One Teamsters out of two is a member of our Solidarity Fund, is a shareholder. Way to go. Hats off. Hats off, Teamsters, Jean Lavigne, and also to the work led by Alain de Grandpré. Not only he's representing you at the QFL office, but member of the board. And that's a huge responsibility, let me tell you. There's a double accountability, if you will. Alain de Grandpré has to take into account what's happening on the Teamsters side of things, what is the advantage for the Teamsters as a whole, and those who are members of the fund. You have to juggle with those two realities. You have to make sure that our people get their return. You have to work in favor of work, and you have to do this not to the detriment of your members. And it's a day-to-day challenge, but it's a very positive one, something that gives rise to passion. In the last budget, we heard that our tax credits were going to be cut back. There was a huge campaign. And in Quebec, there was an outcry in Quebec as a whole, Chamber of Commerce, Conseil du Patronat, employers, the National Assembly in its entirety, small, medium-sized companies, unions, social groups, everybody raised and cried out towards the government Harper, because we're not talking about charity. These federal credits are not charity. The federal government is making its money within 3 years, rest assured, despite these tax credits. And it's a direct attack on Quebec, because 85% are granted to Quebec. So it's a vengeance on the part of Harper, because in Quebec we didn't vote for him, and I hope we never vote for him ever again either.
Notre Fonds de solidarité, Robert en a parlé dans sa présentation, a été fondé à l'époque de Louis Laberge. Moi, j'étais à Sept-Îles à ce moment-là. Les compagnies fermaient, des villes minières entières fermaient. Ma rue, j'étais le seul que la maison n'était pas à vendre. C'est ça, la situation qu'on vivait au début des années 80. Et plus souvent qu'autrement, on se disait, si seulement on avait une institution financière qui, contrairement aux banques, serait patient, du capital patient, puis qui ne tirerait pas à plug chaque fois qu'on veut sauver des jobs. Et c'est là qu'on a fondé le Fonds de solidarité. C'est un success story pas ordinaire. Il y a 617 000 actionnaires au Fonds de solidarité.
1,600 people, more than $9 billion, 67%, $5.6 billion invested in our jobs in the province of Quebec. 2,200 partner companies. We've saved and maintained more than 500,000 jobs within the last 20 years. The last 8 semesters were positive in world and North American world conjunction. We were able to obtain some return for our shareholders, and the results for the 9th semester are coming out tomorrow. You understand that Alain and myself are held to secrecy because of the Autorité des marchés financiers, but tomorrow you will hear of the results of the 9th semester. You'll find out if it's positive or not tomorrow. I'll send a mail to Bob Bouvier, and he'll be able to tell you what stands, what gives. Furthermore, the Solidarity Fund, there's one Quebecer out of 6 is a shareholder. 200,000 shareholders who have nothing else. They don't have anything else. Nothing else at their retirement than what they're getting with the Fonds de Solidarité. I would like to say this in closing. I was asked to be brief. I would have so much to say still. But I would like to tell you that the world of all that is union in Quebec and Canada, we cannot sit on our laurels. They'll always have Yves Duhem, and he writes into the Toronto Sun, can you believe, to denigrate the Quebec Society and union members twice a week, and Mario Dumont, who have forums and say, today, unionism is not necessary. It was good at the time of our parents, but today's companies are just so nice and so kind and generous that we don't need them. Well, let me tell you that the construction workers founded at their expense, right, in the next 2 weeks, and the Richard Martineau's, who also denigrate us 2-3 times a week in the Journal de Montréal. We're always going to have to stand up and defend ourselves. We're always going to have to defend our values and everything that we publish and write. Let us turn elsewhere for a while. In 1945, 36% of the population was unionized. They were strong. Today, they're at 11% in the States. Things are looking bad in the States. The middle class people live in gated communities to pay for their own security. Americans haven't had wage increases relative to the cost of living for more than 25 years. It's going down. You know it. You're part of the international. You know what difficulty they're living, and you see the erosion of the middle class. There are 300 Americans that win more than 150 million Americans. Such a society is not an egalitarian society, and the level of unionism when it goes back, the spread between the rich and the poor just worsens. That's why we are pro-union. That's why we are activists, and because we want a proper society with good working conditions and a more egalitarian society. When I look at what's happening in Europe, that's coming out of the country who's doing best is German. 40% level of unionization. Where are those countries with the highest middle class, where there's the most equality? Scandinavian countries, and they're unionized. That's 70%. We have our raison d'être, and we have our reason to keep on recruiting in Quebec and in Canada. You know, our strength our members and our activists. Despite all the attacks from everywhere, our members and our activists are the difference. At the QFL, we train 10,000 people a year. Teamsters and others, because training is very important. And at the Fonds de Solidarité, 6,000 activists on economy to understand what a company budget is, be able to understand in what economic sector we're negotiating with the idea of best serving our members even yet. Your strength at Teamsters, in closing, is yourselves. Your strength is yourselves, once again, but under one condition, that when you get back home, when you get back to work, you have to say the proper things to your locals. Speak well of Teamsters and CLC. That's what our strength is. Speak well of who we are. That is where our strength lies. I encourage you to work in that direction. I think together we are going to grow, we're going to recruit, and we're going to preserve our middle class, whether it be in Quebec or in Canada, and we're going to just do better and better. Thank you for your attention, and have a great convention.
Thank you, Michel. Great message. As you can see, regardless if you're in this country, if you're in Quebec or anywhere else, we might have a higher percentage of unionized workers. But the challenge hasn't changed and will never change. It's a never-ending story.